Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. Great to have you back for another episode here on the podcast. I want to mention, if you're enjoying the podcast, you love the podcast, you're a big fan, your support would mean the world. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/sobermotivation. Drop your donations there. Everything goes towards helping fund all the subscriptions, hosting the podcast, doing all of that cool stuff. So that would mean a lot. The holidays are coming up quick for all of us as well. The new year is going to be here soon. And we had an incredible meeting in the Sober Motivation community on Monday. I mean, we're always having these great meetings that really seem to move things forward for so many people. But we had a member that was celebrating 1 year, 365 days. He invited some guests in as well to sort of share the accomplishment with them. And there was a lot of tears shed, me a couple times for sure. And it was just so beautiful just to see the impact of making the decision to get sober, how it impacts so many people around us. I think one of the hidden costs of continuing drinking is that it removes us from being present, having really good connections, and really showing up in not only our life, but others as well. So if you want to change things up and be part of a community heading into the new year or right now, jump over and check out the Sober Motivation community. We have over 15 meetings a week. We have a men's meeting, a women's meeting, and we have some incredible hosts that are just really down to earth and there to support you, there to listen. It's not about force feeding you solutions and telling you that you should do this and you should do that. It's more listening and creating connection and community that can help us move forward. So if you're on your first day or you're within your first year or wherever you're at in your journey and you feel like adding a community would be helpful, and I'm here to tell you that it is. It changes the game for so many people. It changes things completely. You feel less alone. You feel more connected. You feel less shame. Every time you share about something, the power goes away from how we used to feel about it. And it is really transformative. So would love to have you. I'll drop the link down in the show notes below, or you can just message me on Instagram if you have any questions. The first month is free, and I hope to see a few of you there. Now let's get to Brittany's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Brittany with us. Brittany, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I am really good and excited to connect with you and have you share your story with all of us on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah. What was it like for you growing up?
So growing up, overall, I can name off a lot of wonderful things. I grew up here in Minnesota, out in the country, traditional family, mom, dad, siblings. And yeah, I mean, overall, it was a good childhood. The only things I can say is that from as young as I can remember, I suffered with severe clinical depression, and that did impact me as a child. My father was an alcoholic throughout my entire childhood, drank every day. That obviously had its impact on me, but I loved my family just the same, but those were definitely big struggles I had.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that too. It's Minnesota. I mean, that's weather's a lot like what I get here in Canada too, right? The snow. What are some of your earliest memories? Yeah.
Mother Nature has always been my first love. So I love just being out in the woods or swimming in the lakes, Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. So lake life was a big thing. My family was really into camping and hiking and all that kind of stuff. So we did a lot of that. And we embraced the winter. We did what we could do during the cold months. But yeah.
That's good. That's good. What did school and stuff look like for you?
School, I took school very seriously. I was, for the most part, a straight A student. I was hyper independent. My parents didn't have to get after me hey, did you do your homework yet? It was just she always has her homework done. So I was very studious. And again, I took deadlines seriously, all that. The only thing that, so during school, I was kind of a lone wolf. I wanted friends, but I don't know. It's one of those things where some kids just feel like very adult at a young age. So sometimes I didn't connect with my peers as much as at an adolescent level. So I spent a lot of time alone as a kid, and it wasn't the easiest thing for me to make friends, not because I wasn't friendly or any of that. It just, you know, it's hard to kind of explain in that respect, but I was the type of kid that was like, let me hang out with the teachers. I don't know. So that was kind of the school side of things.
Yeah.
Very, very lone wolf. But if I did make a friend, it was like, okay, that is my friend, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Best
yeah.
best friend right there. Cool. Thanks for sharing that with us too. It's always interesting because you hear a lot of stories on the podcast and you've listened to the show, and some parents grow up maybe struggling with drinking, and then there are other people who their parents never drank and they still, oddly enough, find themselves sort of on this journey of alcohol being problematic for them. You growing up around that, did you develop any insight or any sort of beliefs about how alcohol impacted somebody's life, and saying maybe that would be something you wouldn't explore, or you would explore cautiously? Did you have any of those thoughts early on?
Yes. For number one, I hated when my dad drank. I did not like it. And I wanted him to quit so badly. My mom did all the things. And as a kid too, I felt like I had empathy for my dad and understood to a certain extent why he did drink, because I knew he had a very challenging childhood, but I still didn't fully understand it. I just knew like I remember thinking like, man, why can't you just stop? I remember thinking that like but as a result, I did have a negative viewpoint on alcohol and thought it wasn't something I'd ever want to mess around with because of him. Later on in the teenage years where, you know, my peers are starting to experiment with it more, I'm just like, no thanks. But eventually I started to see them. It would look more fun and appealing the way they would go about it than the way my dad did. So I'm like, well, they're making it not look so bad. And then I kind of thought to myself, well, I'm not my dad, so that's not going to happen to me if I try to give this a go.
Yeah.
And yeah, was I wrong about that? Absolutely. But
Yeah. Well, that's kind of like something that I've talked about so much on the podcast. It's such a interesting thing about the human experience is that we can so easily see where one thing has brought somebody else, but so easily put ourselves in a different category or a different box, or that our journey is going to be completely different without maybe having the vision for potentially that it could look the same, worse, maybe not as bad as somebody else, right? That it impacts people in different ways too, which is it's so interesting.
it really is. I know it's like I almost had this. I don't know. It's like my mom even used to say to me growing up, now be careful, you know, alcoholism runs in both sides of your family. And I don't know what, like, I didn't take it as seriously as I should have. I think I did early on, but again, once I just started seeing my peers enjoy themselves so much with it, I just literally kind of dismissed that and just was like, oh, I guess my experience will be special. I'll be set apart from the family bloodline. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. And
yeah.
that's interesting too. Your mom had mentioned it. Was she a big drinker or no?
Nope. My mom was so repulsed by my dad's drinking that she was like, she just was like, I don't want nothing to do with alcohol.
Yeah.
And she just doesn't have an addictive personality either. But
Yeah. So it was
yeah,
kind of, you saw kind of both sides of things there too. And it is interesting when you do. I mean, I think when most of us get into it, I can't speak for everybody, but I think when most of us do, it doesn't necessarily start out with problems.
no,
That kind of comes further down the line. So I think like, okay, you have in your head, right? You see how it's impacting your dad's life, but then you experiment with it and it's your experience is nothing like that. So
right.
it does really kind of make a lot of sense to why we wouldn't connect the dots. I mean, we're younger too, and we're still learning and
Yep.
everything's developing. And I only lived to Friday night when I was younger. So if what I was doing wasn't involved in that time, or the impacts or the consequences weren't going to hit me then, I mean, I didn't really think twice about a lot of the stuff I did too. And I mean, my big part of my story is I wanted to fit in. I was looking for a sense of belonging. At the time, I didn't realize it, but alcohol was just that free pass. Like if I could get alcohol and I hung out with other people who drank, we had absolutely nothing else in common. And I was like, not quote unquote cool, but we could still kick it when we drank at parties. And I just thought it was the greatest thing ever. I mean, what other than sort of you mentioned there, your peers where you look like having a good time sort of deal. What was there anything else that sort of interested you in drinking?
Yeah. So another thing, I was always just, and still am, a major music junkie. So a lot of the artists that I really looked up to and loved their work, a lot of them I would see drinking or using drugs. And it did kind of put this image in my head, like that's kind of cool, or that makes them more creative, that makes them more wild and free. I did associate alcohol with creativity and a sense of a free spirit. So that was kind of the light I painted it in that respect. And I had a best friend in junior high and high school, and she was the one that actually first was like, "Hey, let's try smoking cigarettes." Same thing with cigarettes. I thought, "Oh, all my favorite artists, you see them smoking, they look cool, whatever, whatever." When her and I started smoking cigarettes, that's kind of how it started. And then it was her idea initially, like, "Hey, let's drink together. Let's try getting drunk. Like, it'll be fun." And we were connected at the hip. Me and this girl were besties. It was like that soul friend kind of thing, right? When we started drinking together, we were having fun. It was a blast, whatever. But she went from 0 to 100 fast with alcohol. And it was very bad. She had, been in treatment a few times before ever turning 21, a DUI before 21. So I was, again, comparing myself to her, thinking I'm not as bad as her, even though I was keeping up with her just fine, just not quite to her extent. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you had that. And that's another thing I think that comes up in a lot of our stories is that we do often compare to, say, John down the street or that person over there or another person and say, you know what, it's not as bad as where they're at. So in turn, not looking at where we're at, but just saying, I'm not as bad as so-and-so. There's nothing to see here. I'm good to go. Everything's okay.
Yes.
Which is interesting. So, but you mentioned too, it started with smoking. And I think that's sort of, I mean, that's probably a lot of people's story too, where things can maybe start. But I feel like once in my life anyway, once I crossed one line of something I said I would never do, it became easier to cross the second line of something I said I would never do. And then became easier. I feel like it just kind of slipped away what I knew was right. It was just easier to kind of keep going in that direction, to try new things, to take more risks, see where I would land.
That's so true. I think cigarettes really are like one of the first gateway drugs for a lot of people. And maybe these days vaping, I don't know for sure, but because it's that one thing, it's kind of taboo, but it's kind of cool. And yeah, and once you experiment with that, yeah, it's like, why not experiment with this, that, and the third? And that is absolutely my story.
Just kind of keeps going. How was the end of high school and everything for you? I mean, any memories from there?
Yeah. Again, high school, me and my friend, we really had fun together, and we were kind of, I guess, two lone wolves that met, and we're just like, it was cool. But I ended up doing online high school for 11th and 12th grade, and she did as well. And so that gave us a lot more freedom. And so I would get my schoolwork done when I could, and I still was maintaining good grades. But then it was like, "Hey, are you done with school?" "Oh yeah, I'm done with school too. Let's kick it." And so, we would drink. And then we would listen to our music and drink and, go hang out in the woods. That was kind of our thing. And she got her license before me. And so she'd pick me up, and she was like one of the first people, or is the first person to really desensitize me to the idea of drinking and driving. So we would drink and drive together around our little small town and go hiking. And I'm like, oh, she's driving just fine. Like, again, this is so bad looking back, but in my teenage brain, I was justifying it. And we did a lot of stuff like that. I had a job at a bakery, and some of the people I worked with there too, we would, oh my gosh, we would make a little drink and frost donuts and slice bread while drinking at work.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was all in high school. And yeah, I can think back to a lot of great times, but it was definitely the beginning of something a lot worse. So
Yeah. But when you're going through it, there's all maybe these small little events that just normalize, drinking kind of being part of the culture that we're, living in, or just part of the events and kind of what we do. I mean, I think that's such a slippery slope when I look back at my story, when I connected the drinking to like happiness, when I connected the drinking to connecting with other people, because, as time went along, I lost the ability to do that otherwise. That just kind of became the thing of like, I'm bored, or here's downtime, or here's meeting somebody new, or you're having a rough day. Let's talk about it over a drink. And then it's like, before I knew it, everything required a drink, or I thought it did.
yes,
Yeah, I just didn't have the other ways. And it's kind of like what you mentioned there too. When I think back to this stuff, I'm like, man, like that's so strange. That's so far from where I am now. I can see it clear as day. But when you're going through it, that's the thing with all of this. The awareness is just not there, which is wild.
yes, I completely agree. You, a lot of your self awareness just is gone and numbed, and the seriousness of things is just down. Everything's downplayed as long as it's in the name of protecting, like the habit, protecting the being able to drink. And like you said, at first, alcohol was like a thing to just do for fun, but it very quickly was like, this is the sidekick. You have it for everything. You have it for when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're mad, when you're celebrating, or when you're mourning. Like it's always the perfect sidekick, or was believed to be. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else too before we move forward from your childhood that you feel is important to the story?
Yeah, I mean, I did have a number of traumatic events that did also happen to me in very early young ages, without getting into details, that I never knew needed to be addressed in a more maybe professional way, like perhaps being seeing a therapist or stuff like that. It was just like kind of like if something really, really bad or traumatic happened, it's just like, oh well, that happened, just move on. But that still lived inside and was manifesting in different ways. And I too young to even know that that's a thing, but that definitely was something I carried with me throughout the childhood and through adult life that I wasn't confronting or dealing with. So I will mention that in terms of childhood, a lot of traumatic things and even situations of certain types of danger being normalized, chaos being normalized. Um, so I did want to mention that. And then one last thing is that childhood, high school, junior high best friend that I had, I did have to end that friendship because the alcohol was just so out of control and things like that. So once I did, I thought, oh, well, I have my life back. I can still drink, but it won't be like to the level that me and my friend were drinking. So that's kind of where that chapter closes and moves on into the next phase of how drinking looked for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that too. It is so interesting because I even reflect back on my story. A lot of things that happened, we've definitely lived two different paths in life, but a lot of the things that happened that could fall into that category of trauma too. I feel like at an early age, I developed sort of this body armor or this way of coping with things. And at the time helped me survive. But as I got older, I felt like those were the things standing in the way of sort of the next level in my life, of the ways of coping. They served me maybe in those moments, but it came a point to where they were just keeping me stuck. And maybe that's something, if that's relatable at all to you, maybe that's something we'll kind of talk about too, like further down the road is, I think part of this whole process is realizing for us There's a whole lot more to this picture than just drinking alcohol or just not drinking alcohol, sort of as we go through it. So after high school there, I mean, where do you venture off to?
Yeah. So after high school, I was ambitious and wanted to make a good living. So it was just a lot of work and play. I made time for work and play, but I was definitely managing my alcohol in comparison to those early years a lot better. But it was still something that I prioritized. Drinking was always a priority and was important for me to make time for. But yeah, so, getting into the working world, I got into the car business when I was 20 years old, I believe it was. And I am still to this day. Good career. I also completed a college degree and was on the dean's list, 4.0, all that stuff. I had done some world travel. I went to China, just was as a young person in their 20s, just trying to have as colorful of a life as possible and be successful and again, still make as much room for play as I could.
Yeah. I mean, it's in those days it probably felt like a win-win, right? I mean, you've got sort of this career that you're starting out in, and then you got some time for drinking. I mean, was a majority of your drinking done like at bars and clubs, or was it at home, or that
It
look?
was at home and at bars and social events.
Yeah.
I loved going out for cocktails with friends and just letting your hair down and all that stuff, but I definitely like to have my wine at home and my way to wind down after working hard. It was a reward system for sure. And I was drinking pretty much almost every single day, but only some of the days was I drinking to the point where it's like, whoa, that was a lot. And, you have to work the next day type thing.
Yeah.
But it was daily. But I just thought, oh, like I have control of my life. So
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah, things were good. Yeah, I mean, the things were not falling apart, which I think is a relatable story to so many of us. That there was a point in time where, yeah, I mean, we were drinking in excess. It was a lot of drinking, but it didn't impact our life, and we're not losing our job, and all these other things that maybe these are things we're looking for, right? As like society to say, okay, you for sure Brad, you just lost your job because of drinking. You for sure have a problem. And if those aren't happening, I think it's very easy. And we also, maybe this is relatable to you or not, but I purposefully, I think, surrounded myself with other people that were kind of living like I was. Like I was hanging out with people that liked to drink and drank a lot and made excuses for drinking and wanted to watch football all day and drink. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I didn't really surround myself with people that weren't living like that. And it kind of makes sense looking back. People that weren't doing that really probably didn't want to hang out with me or the people that were, right? That wouldn't really make a whole lot of sense. But and if you don't see anything different, then it's like, okay, this is normal.
Yes. Nope, I 100% agree. My friends were chosen by, do you also like to drink and let your hair down? Do you like to party? Do you like to get dressed up and make it look glamorous? Or, what's drink about a bunch of wine and just talk for hours on the balcony and smoke cigarettes and just, I thought that drinking with others was building deeper bonds and connections. Like we're just getting more comfortable with each other, things like that. But yeah, absolutely. I chose people specifically based off, can you hang? Like
Yeah.
if you didn't drink or didn't like to do that kind of stuff, yeah, I was kind of like, you're cool. I respect you, but do I want to spend ample amount of time with you? No, that's going to be too boring for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, drinking alone is kind of, yeah. I mean, I think that's where a lot of us end up. But I think in the beginning or more beginning stages, yeah, it's about connecting with other people. And it's a really interesting point you bring up there about how we think we're connecting on this deeper level, right? There's like a weird quote that says something about, when you're drinking, you kind of let out the truth of like the heart or something. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like that is so not true because
No.
we can't even really connect with ourselves at that point. I mean, I looked at drinking then too. I think a lot like what you're mentioning is I was able to connect and let my guard down and forget about my insecurities. But I don't think much of what I talked about was actually like the truth. Maybe what I thought was the truth. I think the second I started drinking was a disconnect from my authentic self. And
Yes.
but I believed the opposite when I was in the mix of it.
Gosh, that's so real. 100%. Mm-hmm.
Are
Yeah.
you dating or anything at this point in your life?
Yeah. So that's the other thing. I was in a relationship with somebody from, I think we got together when I was 21, and through, I think I I think that relationship ended when I was 28. I believe it was 28. But this person, great person, I'm still very close with them to this day. But they drank as well, but they didn't like have a problem, so to speak. But I think, and we would drink together, wine at home, whatever. But like, and I think they always actually, in fact, they knew that I like to drink. So, but I don't think they were alarmed, so to speak. I think they just thought, young girl, 20s, oh, she's doing right by herself. She's working hard. She doesn't miss work. She's doing good in school. She keeps the house clean. She, responsible, very responsible. But so I was in that relationship, and I think too, because he didn't drink to the level that I wanted to drink, I did try to mirror him because I definitely didn't want to appear to him too reckless. So yeah, I do think that if it wasn't for being with him, I probably actually would have been a lot more reckless. So
Yeah.
that's another kind of codependency in that respect. I'm dependent on mirroring my partner when I should be able to just manage that on my own, right?
Wow. In a perfect world. But that's interesting so you're in this relationship too, but yeah, I mean, you're doing what you need to do. And I think that's kind of one of the more interesting things about alcohol as a drug. I mean, sometimes people want to say drugs and alcohol. I did the DARE program and it was always kind of separated, back in like grade 5 where you write the paper. And I don't know if you did that, and it was kind of like the two separate things, right? I mean, alcohol was dangerous, but the drugs over here, I mean, you got to, never do this or say no to drugs. The big campaign, back in the 80s or whatever, 90s of just say no to drugs. But it was so interesting. When you're struggling with alcohol, you can really hide out. Like you can really kind of fit into it. I used to go out with a lot of people and they say, I never knew you had a problem. Well, what you didn't know is after we stopped hanging out, I went home and drank a 6-pack or a dozen beers as well, as to where you probably went home and called it a night. Like I didn't want everybody else to see that side of things.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, it can make it complicated, but it's like, we look back and like, well, why did nobody say anything? It's like, man, because we were just keeping it quiet. We didn't want everybody
Yes.
to know and stuff in front of people. So, that is, yeah, that's always something is interesting with alcohol too, is it can seem to carry on maybe for longer and not be as red flag or as noticeable. I think for ourselves too. I think we tell ourselves a lot of things like, I mean, how could it be that bad? It's on every billboard. They sell it at the grocery store. They sell it at the convenience store. Everybody does it. We can feed ourselves these sort of ideas to keep things going. How do things look like for you moving forward too? I mean,
Yeah. No, I mean, I just had to respond to that because I do think I was very methodical at who I drank around, how much I drank around them, how it appeared in front of them. And, it was it was a full-time job managing like my
yeah,
drinking and how it appeared to others. For some, it was like, if I knew you were on my level, great.
yeah,
If you're not, I'm like, okay. And so also to that too, like before a function or something like that, I would always drink before I went to the function, show up, seem composed and like articulate and all those things. And they'd have no idea. Like I drank a lot before I showed up here because my tolerance was very high. So, but then I would start to drink as if I was my first drink since that day, right? But mind you, I'd been drinking. And so then I'm drinking at the function and then I'm drinking when I get home more in, my privacy. And yeah, I was very good at managing and hiding certain aspects of the drinking. And that was a theme throughout all the years I continued to drink. But yeah, so, that to say that relationship I was in eventually collapsed in whatever kind of sense. And I had been in that relationship, like I said, since 21 years old. So at this point, I'm 28 and I'm going to be starting all over, move, all those things. And my drinking had gotten a lot worse the last 2 years I was in that relationship. And I was home alone all the time because he was gone a lot more for work and things of that nature. So at home, I was drinking 2 bottles of wine a night by myself on all the nights, work nights, weekends, and just it was getting so bad. And in my mind, like when I left that relationship, I went to stay with my family, like for a little bit to figure out like what am I doing next? I
Yeah.
still had my job and all of that stuff, but I remember thinking like, oh, maybe my drinking will get a lot better now that, I'm on a new chapter in my life. And even though I was still heartbroken, I mean, I loved that person and it was, 7, 8 years with somebody and then you're just starting over. It's a lot. So my drinking continued, but I had a couple of months where it really simmered down because at this point I'm at my family's house and my dad had given up drinking sometime when I was in high school, I believe. So he's sober and I'm glad he's sober for the record. But I was just like, yeah, this isn't going to be a place where it's appropriate to drink. So to me, in some ways, it was kind of like checking into rehab.
Yeah.
Um, but so that was in 2019. And yeah, so my drinking was still a thing, but I was trying to be moderate, trying to manage it. And eventually I moved out of my family's house and it's 2020 at this point. And my drinking got heavier and heavier. And, in 2020, it was even more normalized to day drink. I'm like, cool. Like what I already like to do is now normalized,
Yeah.
you know?
Home
So
run.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious too how your life feels and looks outside of this, right? So I mean, you're showing up to work and you went through or you're going through this breakup. I could be way off in left field here, Brittany. I very well could be, but my best guess here is on the outside, for the most part, if I asked anybody around you, they'd say, "You're good. Things are
Yep.
good. You're doing well. You're on track. You're achieving your goals. You're where you want to be." But I have this hunch that on the inside, things are not really like that for you at all. Any accuracy?
Yeah. Complete accuracy. Hmm.
How do you feel inside? I mean, are you able to kind of go back there and articulate how you felt about how you were as maybe somebody who came off as having a ton of confidence and being really certain in where you're going and how your life was looking, but maybe on the inside, second guessing a lot of things?
Yeah. So I had not been okay on the inside, really, ever. Like I mentioned, depression was something I had my whole life. So I was always using alcohol and drugs for that matter, pills when I could get them as a form of self medicating. And I knew that I was sick. I did, in my knowing of knowing, knew I was sick and knew that I needed to get a hold of things, but I still kept blaming outside things for why I was drinking. I'm like, oh, I just don't feel aligned at my job anymore. Or I just don't like where I live. I just need to move. I just need to move to a different state. I would just think if only this changes or this changes or this changes, then maybe I won't be so heavily reliant on drinking or I won't be misusing it. Like I'll be able to moderate if I just change certain things. And I really believed that. And so, again, I knew I was sick and I knew I was kind of performing for others by making it seem like everything's cool. And I was very ashamed of it. So I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. Um, I kind of thought I got myself into this. I need to get myself out. So I didn't reach out for help, even though I should have.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that too, because I think it's easy at times to get really honed in on the timeline and maybe not go to that level of how things, you know what I mean? We're actually looking. And I think that, or how things were actually feeling on the inside. I think it's very easy for a lot of us that struggle with this to paint a really pretty picture. I mean, I've heard stories from people that on the inside they're dying, but on the outside, nobody had any idea. And when they tell people they quit drinking, everybody looked at them sideways like, I never knew you had a drinking problem. I never knew you were struggling with it. And
Nope.
and that can be like that thing of like what you mentioned there, the shame of how did I let things get this far, or I can't let anybody in to let them know what I'm struggling with. And you kind of brought up there too, like one of my favorite things and kind of one of the things that really changed my life and brought everything into perspective is wherever you go, there you are.
Yes.
So we can want to go on the vacation or move to the different state or get the different house or the different relationship or the different job. And you know what? Those things might keep us on the straight and narrow for a little bit, but the novelty usually wears off
Yes.
without the internal change that, you know, has to happen for things. So that's, I think that's a thing a lot of people go through. We try it, right? Like, I mean, what sounds better, and now this could sound really weird, but what sounds better to somebody struggling with alcohol than a life where we could figure out how to have the alcohol and not have the chaos or have the consequence or have the anxiety. It's like, man, there was a point in my life where I was like, that's a home run. That's the lottery. Like, can I
Yeah.
figure out how to have alcohol be part of my life without all this other stuff? Like,
Yes.
let's figure out the equation. Like, that would just have been a grand slam. Looking at my life today, that wouldn't be a grand slam, but there was a point in time where I would have thought, man, that's winning. That's great.
Yes. We wanted our cake and eat it too. We did. And, it was delusional to think that that actually was something that could be attainable. Again, looking back, I'm like, man, I really believed that there was a way to to have my cake and eat it too. And it's just like, no. So it is really, that's just very real. And that saying, no matter where you go, there you are. I remember actually, it was the first month I got sober. Someone close to me said that to me. And it really is exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. Cause I was in early sobriety. I got, sober on January 3rd. So this was probably like on January 12th when they said that to me. Cause I'm like, I think I just need to move to, I can't remember where I said at the time.
Yeah.
And that's when they said to me, cause I opened up to this person. I was like, look, my life is a mess, but I'm 5 days sober, whatever it was. But anyway, so when they said that, I was like, you're right. Like, I need to make this right here now where I am and not show, if I do decide to move someday, not show up fragmented and still same old patterns. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my bad. What was your last question?
I don't know that I had one. I was just thinking too, I mean, so you had that sort of the, quote unquote rehab, right? Staying with your parents too. The thing not to do is drinking. And then kind of it sounds like next part of your story is you're kind of heading back out on your own to kind of take on the world solo in a sense this time. And I mean, how does this all come together for you as you're moving around? I mean, are you still in the same town you grew up in?
No, so my parents, they live out in the country.
Okay.
And then, so I was back in Minneapolis at this point, and I lived with a couple of girlfriends at the time.
Okay.
And so it was 2020 and they drank too. So, we're drinking, we're having fun. I mean, we're also, what do you call it? Not going out because of the pandemic and all the things. We were just enjoying our time together, but like my drinking was getting excessively worse that year. And so when my lease ended with them, I was like, whoa. So I actually checked myself back into rehab again. Meaning my parents, after living with them. And I'm like, I just need a reset real quick. So I went to stay with my family again for a few months thinking, I would be able to quit. My drinking got even worse. Even at their house, I was just drinking alone there, in privacy and hiding it.
Yeah.
In hiding. Oh yeah, they had no idea. But then, yeah, I only stayed there for maybe a few months. And then got a place alone this time. Now, living alone, I thought it was the first time actually I'd ever lived alone. So I thought, hopefully this goes good drinking wise. And it didn't. I drank alone my drinking was even worse. But at the same time, I liked the solitude aspect of it because I'm not having to make who's watching. I can drink as much as I please and within whatever reason and still try to just remain responsible with work and all that stuff. So basically, at this point, I'm just kind of back to my lone wolf ways and drinking and working home. And then my main version of fun, and I hate to admit this, but I was like, as long as I have my dog, alcohol, and the open road, I'm good. So I did, my favorite activity was me and my dog get ready to go on a hike somewhere beautiful. I have my alcohol, I'm drinking, driving, and going to this beautiful place in nature and drinking on the hike and get lost in the music on the highway. And to me, that was a perfect day. And I would do that all the time. That was like I said, my form of fun and solace. But at the same time, that was the best of it. But at home, I was just at work. I was hungover at work every day. I was hungover all the time. My body was just like, couldn't keep up. It was getting worse and worse. And I was so depressed. It was just getting really bad. But again, when that lease was coming to an end, I knew I didn't want to live there. I didn't like it. And I decided to stay with my family again. This was, again, my version of checking back into rehab and trying to recalibrate because I was like, I just need to get out of Minnesota. I need to quit my job. I need to get out of Minnesota. I need to go somewhere that's more in alignment with me. And so I had plans to move all kinds of different places over the years. And I was just in this loop. It would never happen. And so eventually one day, or after months of contemplation, I decided, you know what? I'm going to quit my job. At this point, I'd been there for almost 10 years. I'm going to move to this little remote cabin in Wisconsin. And I'm going to get a job in that area and work on a book that I had been writing. And I just thought that was going to be the answer. And in all my journal entries too, like I believed that this was going to be the answer and I was going to be able to quit drinking. So I did. I put in my notice to my work and leased this place in Wisconsin, which was a month-to-month lease. And I bring it up for a reason. And was about to move forward. The drinking was still very bad. I could not make it 2 days, let alone one. And my work at the time they really wanted me to stay. They were like, is there anything we can do, And finally it occurred to me what it would take for me to stay. So I negotiated a different kind of schedule structure that would make me feel like I had a little more work-life balance. And they approved that. Well, that meant that this little place in Wisconsin I was at for a few months, not even, I would need to move back closer to work again. So because that was a month-to-month lease, I was able to get out and I moved back. I got a new place again in my hometown and did a little bit of commuting for work. So they accepted that. And again, the drinking is still really bad. And I'm very lonely because, again, my life is in a lot of solitude. And as far as dating was concerned, I didn't date. I didn't do any of that. And one of my friends was like, if you really do want to meet somebody, you might need to try the dating apps because you work all the time and, you go home. So give it a chance and try not to be too picky because you're so picky. Like you gotta, and I'm like, okay. So I did, I gave dating apps a chance and I ended up meeting somebody on the dating app around the same time in this new place. And, we, I guess, hit it off. And it was very early on, I realized this person did not have a drinking problem. And I was very attracted to that. And so I thought, oh, they're going to rub off on me, and I just won't drink as often, and I won't be as lonely. And so that was helping for a little bit. And I was like embarrassed of my drinking. So I'm like, I don't want this person that seems so amazing to be like, oh, never mind, she's got a problem. But it wasn't long into that relationship that I realized this person had some really bad anger problems. And at the time, they weren't directed at me. It would be other things, but they were the type where if something bad happened at work, they're punch a wall. And I'm like, oh my gosh, whoa. But they seemed wonderful. There was already the kind of this Jekyll and Hyde when they came to this person. But I'm like, well, so far it hasn't been at me. And this relationship moved very fast, but it wasn't long before, and at the time I wouldn't have been able to call it abuse, but now with the education I have and everything, I was in an abusive relationship and in the early stages of it. So it was psychological, emotional, mental, and I was walking on eggshells. And I had a lot of highs with this person and a lot of lows, just like alcohol. And somehow, after a very, very, very low with alcohol, and I'm like, I'm never drinking again. That's it. Today's the day. Things neutralize a little bit. And then my brain only remembers the good times. And I'm like, okay, drinking. And it was the same thing with this person. They oftentimes say like abusive relationships are like a drug because of all the highs and lows and how our brain deals with somebody being the cause of harm, but also the solution to the harm. And again, much like alcohol. So basically, this relationship lasted about a year in total, but my drinking was getting worse while in this relationship because now I'm also drinking to numb myself from the nightmare I'm in with this person. And it was very challenging. And I kept thinking it's kind of same thing with alcohol. Well, maybe when his problems he has in his life dissipate and or things are more neutralized, he'll be the better version of himself that I've seen so many times. And yeah, so basically I'm just in this state of utter delusionment with everything, with the alcohol, with this person. And I didn't want to be alive anymore. I all the time just thought it'll be just so much better if I just cease to exist. And it was just very heavy. And I could tell my body, well, I was skin and bones at this point too. So I wasn't like my appetite was just gone. So I wasn't eating, but I was drinking and just very sick and withdrawn. And so I remember it was October of 2024. It kind of, not because I wanted more pain or harm, but I kind of wish something worse would happen so that it was like I had the ultimate clarity in terms of the relationship. And it was in November, he did end up physically assaulting me. And I guess that was the clarity that I needed, and I got it. So I planned a plan to get him out of my home, and it was very traumatic, right? So I got him out of my home, and then I told some people in my life, what had happened, and I knew that would keep me accountable too, because it wasn't so much longer after he had assaulted me that he went right back into love bomb mode and was trying to repair things. And I almost was, maybe I can look past this. Maybe this is just an isolated incident. But my sister especially really helped me stay accountable and know what I was dealing with. So yeah, I legally was able to break my lease after that because of domestic violence. And I went to stay with yet my family again. But this time I was so traumatized. I didn't know what was what. I didn't have the capacity to be like, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? Like, let me just be at my family. And so at this point, it's December and I'm still drinking a lot and I just am wounded and I'm no contact from this person, right?
Yeah.
And I'm listening to now podcasts I'm listening to your podcast and I'm listening to domestic violence podcasts at once. And one of the DV podcasts mentioned that abusive relationships it can be harder to break than a heroin addiction because of the trauma bond that forms. And when they're explaining all this, I'm like having so many dots connecting on my relationship with alcohol and this and how that was kind of a manifestation of what I had going on inside, just reflected in a relationship. And I'm like, it was just very mind blowing. So I'm remaining no contact. It's hard. And in remaining no contact, it's much like abstaining from alcohol in that respect. Although I wasn't abstaining from alcohol just yet. I decided, you know what? My birthday's on December 31st. So I'm like, I'm going to go down to New Orleans. I'm going to get together with some of my friends, try to forget about all this terrible stuff and have a good time. So I booked this trip and I'm there and everything's going good so far. My ex sends me an email. He had already been sending me emails that were just pulling at my heartstrings, right? And I just kept ignoring them. But one night while drinking a little bottle of gin, walking back to my Airbnb in New Orleans, my guard is down. I'm under the influence. I get a message that just tugs at my heart again. And I'm like, you know what? I love him. I miss him. I'm just going to break no contact. And so I did. And next thing you know, he's on the phone and he happened to be in Alabama. He's a truck driver. He's like, he's like, God wants us to be back together. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is all just divine intervention, whatever. So next thing you know, we're together in New Orleans. Everything seems cool. But the very next day, I already started to see little things slip out that kind of showed me that he's just the same person and I'm just falling back into this cycle again. And so to make a long story short, I'm in New Orleans. I'm still drinking, having fun. That was the last time I ever was drunk, by the way. It was in New Orleans, which is kind of funny. But I got back home to Minnesota after that trip and I'm on the phone with my ex again and he's just being awful, just saying awful things. And it was January 3rd. It was morning time. I was in my office at work. And I said, you know what? I'm like, I'm never talking to you again. And I hung up. I said, leave me alone. And I blocked him. It was very hard. I didn't want to do it, but I knew I had to. And after I got off the phone with him, I was just trembling. I was just beside myself. And I knew in that moment, I was like, Brittany, if you want to stay away from this person once and for all and reclaim your life, you need to also quit alcohol today. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because one, you're going to use it to medicate your broken heart. Two, it's going to, again, make you not have boundaries and stay, in control with staying no contact. Because you know how alcohol makes you just forget all about your boundaries and lead with your emotions. So I'm like, there's that end of things. And I'm like, and ultimately, one or both of these things are going to end up killing you. So you have to say goodbye to both. And so I actually did. That was the beginning of my day. That was my day one. And I didn't believe it. I didn't believe I had what it took at the time to stay sober because I had tried so many times. But that is what ended up making it stick. And in early sobriety, whenever I wanted to drink again, I would just tell myself drinking again would be like going back to him, and going back to him would be like going back to drinking. And I'm like, both are destructive and are taking your life away. So they were both enforcement of staying away from each thing. But it was the first time in my entire adult life that I was finally facing emotions head on without numbing. And it was the first time for a lot of things without alcohol. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But again, I knew my life depended on it.
Yeah. Wow. You really hit a stride there with sharing. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
all of that. It's so, you have all these times, right? You shared, right? You're trying. And I mean, maybe they're in the 50s or the hundreds of times you're committing, or maybe under that too, that you're trying to really throw everything at this, right? Your parents' place and changing this and changing that. And then, you have this whole experience. But then it comes down to January 3rd, where I don't know, maybe you woke up that day kind of like it was another day. Then maybe this wasn't even the plan when you woke up that morning. It doesn't sound like it. Like you were going to start this journey again, and then here you find yourself 11 months later.
Yeah. No, it was technically not the plan. But I will say this, that in December, when I had been writing like 2025, what do you call it? New Year's resolutions, that whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
One of my New Year's resolutions, and it wasn't the first time I had this, but I did write this year become either an under moderate drinker or not a drinker at all. So I still wanted to leave a little room for alcohol.
Yeah.
But I did set that. I was like, this is an intention. Like, I need to get this under control this year. So,
Yeah.
but yes, did I think it was going to end up being that early on in the year? No.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's so interesting in so many stories, right? Because we hear of like all these times we tried. And then I think if it doesn't work out, we can beat ourselves up. Like, look, it didn't work out. It'll never work out. Yeah, I'm always failing at this. And then it's kind of the one time maybe where we don't put all the emphasis on like our big goal or I'm quitting forever. It's maybe that quiet conversation we have with ourselves that maybe I'll just give it one more try. Like maybe that's what it takes. I think a lot of times we're looking for a rock bottom. We're looking for the stars to align. We're looking for it all to make sense. We're looking for all the answers. Maybe if I just listen to one more podcast or read one more book or have one more conversation or go to one more meeting, maybe then it will all make sense. But this story is so common. Maybe it was all of the things that we had tried before wasn't all for nothing. Maybe all of the things we had tried were lining us up for like this one moment of clarity or awareness or vision or something spiritual that happens that says, okay, maybe I do have what it takes to just say, stay sober today and see what tomorrow brings tomorrow.
Yes, that is exactly right. Any of the other attempts in the past weren't for nothing. Listening to the podcast, your podcast for those years were not for nothing. It was all accumulating and helping me get to that point. And so you can never, I think, get enough education or flood your mind with this kind of information, even if you're still failing. It's all helping, even if you can't see it because you're not, free yet. But yeah, so
well, when we first connected, like I feel like it's been a while now, but I think I remember this. Hopefully I'm right here, but how you had still been drinking, but we're still listening to the show and doing other stuff as well, I'm sure. And, maybe picking up things or maybe just in the background working on, your subconscious about drinking and how it's showing up in your life and about connecting, little dots here and there of other people's stories. And if they could do it, maybe there's something I could figure out here. Or I think we can do a really good job of isolating ourselves or convincing ourselves that our journey is so much different and our story is different. And although there are elements of that, I think as humans in the experience and the set of emotions that we go through is all relatable, and what brings them upon is different. But from that element, we have so much in common. And,
yes.
Maybe that could be helpful. I want to hear a little bit about how the sobriety journey has been for you. And I mean, as you stack days and, January 3rd, kicking off the new year and your birthday on the 31st, like it's all big stuff coming up for you around the corner, right? It's exciting.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It was crazy. And I had downloaded, one of those I Am Sober apps that helps you count down the days. This was probably like my 20th time downloading one of those apps. Mm-hmm. But I'm like, I'd re-downloaded it, whatever. And I was just so serious about it. And yeah, so 1 week went by. I'm like, dang, you did 1 week. And I'm struggling. It's not to say it's not hard, but like, I'm like, dang, that's so cool. I did 1 week. And again, I'm at my family currently, and I was fine with it. I'm like, this is where I need to be right now. But I was in therapy and doing those kind of things as well. And again, still continuing to listen to your podcast and reading some books. TikTok was big for me.
Yeah.
Other sobriety people on TikTok. Yeah. But I remember one day specifically in January. It was late January. I had just got out of my therapist's office. It was snowing, and we had just talked about some heavy stuff in there. And when I got out, I was like, I really need some wine, like right now, or an old fashioned or something. And I'm like, no, Brittany, like at the time it's been 3 weeks. And I'm like, no, we've come so far. To me, that was that was like a huge milestone, 3 weeks. I'm like, how can you just throw 3 weeks away like that? And I was just having this fight with myself in the parking lot. And then I'm like, what do I do? I was this close to just going to a bar. And I'm like, wait, let me go on TikTok. And I remember I just typed in what to do when you have an alcohol urge. And I watched this girl's video, all of 2 minutes. I don't even remember what it said. All I know is by the time I was done watching the video, my craving went away. And I was like, oh, dang, that's cool. That felt like a superpower in that moment. I'm like, I can't believe I just fought off that heavy urge. And going forward after that, anytime those kind of urges would pop up, I, followed similar practices, and I learned about, the way neural pathways work and the things we normally always associate alcohol with. We can learn new associations, but you have to be patient with it, and trust that those neural pathways do start to connect. Yeah.
Wow, that's huge. In that moment too, where you plug into a video, don't really have any idea what it was all about, but it bought you enough time. I mean, that's the
Yes.
thing. I think that we think that it's like we're craving alcohol all day. I don't know that that's the case for the majority anyway. And it's trying in the beginning. It's just whatever it takes to get through like that 5 minutes or that 2 minutes or that 10 minutes. And then that's why consistency becomes important, because for the rewiring process, for the things to train differently, for us to operate differently, we just need to consistently be making those other decisions. I love how simple you kept it though. I feel like sometimes we try to complicate this whole process. Like, let me complicate everything and make it so dynamic because that's obviously going to work. But the reality is it's very, very simple, because the simpler it is, the more likely I think we're able to follow through and get to where we want to. And it was like that one moment literally changed everything for you. 2 minutes plugging in a search on TikTok kept you in the game. And then, redeploying that sort of strategy over and over has kept you going to, heal up and see the bigger picture a lot better, I'm sure, over the 11 months as opposed to week 1 or week 2.
Yes. You're so right about that. The simplicity of it too. When they say one day at a time, it is down to one moment at a time. I think keeping it that simple is crucial in getting sober and being patient with yourself. That was one thing I just never was when I was trying to quit in the past. Just really let myself sit through a craving. And I just never believed that it could disappear as fast as it can.
Mhm.
That kind of was interesting to me. I just never sat with it long enough to see it happen in real time.
Yeah.
Um,
It was like
yeah.
like a superpower. Yeah. Sitting with things. And we're so used to reaching outside of ourselves, right? For self-medication of some sort or a distraction. And then when you sit with it, yeah, you do realize, hey, it's uncomfortable, but it's not gonna last forever, and it's not gonna take me out. I'm really curious too about where you're at now. I mean, you shared with us, I mean, so much, and like I have heard so many of these stories that I know there's so many layers to people's lives, right? And we've only covered, I'm sure, one speck of sand on an entire beach here, which is perfect. But how do you feel about yourself now with everything that you've been through, and how you even shared in that last story? I mean, wondering if things would be better if you weren't alive. I mean, I think that's very real. I went through a phase in my life where that was the reality. And now when I share it, I'm just like, gosh, you were actually in a place like that. It seems like another world away. How do you feel about yourself now and in the progress you've made?
Exactly what you said. Like that old version of me feels lifetimes away, even in just 11 months. Like I still am just like in disbelief sometimes of just how far down in that hole I was. And I've made tons of progress, but I do, a lot of people I know say this too, just like once you finally get sober and you are deep into it, you're like, wait, I've never really known the most authentic version of me until now. And gosh, sometimes it just one of those things that I look back and I want to cry in a joyful way. But yeah, I mean, just to feel like I have learned how to self-regulate my emotions and learn how to not spiral mentally and learn just to honor my body with mind, soul, and spirit through all forms of life-giving activities has made a world of difference. I don't struggle with depression like I was. And if I have a bout of it, I know how to take care of myself in a way again, that's life-giving, not numbing or that's destroying my spirit. So I spend a lot of time in the gym like a lot of us do in recovery and just reading and just finding joy in all the simple pleasures that are out there and not needing anything to make something seem more, what do you call it, enhanced or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I feel immense gratitude and it feels miraculous. Like, yes, I still, to your point too, like, I'm like, man, I can't believe I was in such a dark place for so long. I really just wanted to not be here anymore. Now I'm just, so grateful to be alive. And I don't want anybody else to be stuck in that either. It can get a lot worse. I knew that there was a part of me that still believed I could go on drinking, and I still had some of that left in me. But I had heard somebody's quote, rock bottom is just a point in which you stop digging. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not digging anymore. I've seen enough. I have had enough.
Yeah.
And this has all been so worth it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well,
Yeah.
incredible job for you to turn things around. And I mean, that joy word too really, really sticks out. There's like happiness and then there's like joy.
Yes.
And I feel like that's one of the first things to go with alcohol. We don't realize it because maybe there's happiness still, but feeling that joy of, say, some people refer to them as the small things in life, the sunrise or the birds chirping. I think that's everything. I mean, I
Yeah.
think those are the things that I missed. I never noticed it, which is wild. I never noticed how beautiful a sunrise or sunset was. I never noticed the birds chirping while I'm sipping on a cup of coffee, or even, I mean, I'm a coffee lover, even how beautiful a cup of coffee is. All of that stuff I just took for granted. I never even had the vision for it. And I think finding that joy again is a big reason why I do it anyway. And why I stay the course is because I know that on the other side, that's all gone.
Yes. Absolutely.
What are
I
you,
couldn't agree more.
yeah. Well, wrapping up here in a couple minutes. I mean, what are your big takeaways? What message would you send out there to anybody who could be in a similar spot or is just getting started?
Yeah. If you are just getting started, if you're still stuck or getting started, I just want you to first be gentle with yourself and give yourself some grace because you have been doing this as a form of it's a survival mechanism and it's just it's the tool you know how to use right now. But so don't let the shame dictate your future or who you can reach out to either for that matter, because I know that was my biggest barrier was shame. But again, be gentle with yourself, plug into these podcasts. And again, like you mentioned, Brad, I would listen to these podcasts while drunk, mascara running down my eyes in bed, hoping it would embed itself into my subconscious. And it did bring me hope. So I would say that even if you're still stuck, listen to the podcasts, read the books, watch the other people on TikTok stories or their tips. Even if you fail at day 5 and you're back at it, again, all these baby steps will add up. And sometimes you do need to fight a battle more than once, but you keep building up those muscles. And so believe in yourself. We all say that, it sounds cliche, but it's true. You just believe in yourself, believe in your power. And it's there, it's waiting for you to tap in. I think that's my biggest advice. And just when you're sitting with the pain and things that you've been suppressing for so long, you're learning how to suffer. Suffering will always be a part of life in one way or another. But the art of learning how to suffer well is a gift you get with sobriety. And I think that has actually been one of the biggest gifts of sobriety for me. And in doing that, you do experience more joy. So it gets easier. And it's one of the most remarkable journeys you could ever take yourself on.
Yeah, wow, beautifully said. What a great way to wrap things up, too. Thank you so much for sharing your story, listening to the show, and happy to hear that, it played some role in you getting to where you are now.
Yeah, I thank you so much. I thank you for what you do. It makes a huge difference. It makes a very huge difference. So your work is appreciated.
Well,
thank you for having me on.
Well, of course. So hopefully you don't reach celebrity status after your episode goes live and stop listening to the show,
I will never stop listening to the show, honestly. I listen to it all the time still. You never want to forget where you came from.
Yeah, true. So true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank you, Brad.
Well, there it is, another incredible episode here on the podcast. Huge shout out to Brittany. I'll drop her contact information for Instagram down in the show notes below. Be sure to send over a message if you're able to connect with any part of her story or just to say thank you. If you haven't left a review yet on Apple or Spotify, jump over there right after listening. I love reading the written reviews on Apple. And that's going to be the first place where somebody who's considering listening to the Sober Motivation podcast is going to start. So drop some reviews about your experience and how you enjoy the show. And I'll see you on the next one.